Hello everybody, my name is Elijah. Welcome to 85 Studios. Welcome back everybody. This is part 5 of our interview with Linn, who tells us a story about her life of 20 years, 20 years in a very haunted house. And if you've been following us so far, some very spooky things happened in this house, and I actually, for one, I believe her 100%. I honestly, I've had some very creepy experiences happen in a haunted house myself. I will someday reveal those stories to you guys, so be sure and stay tuned to the channel or subscribe to the channel so you can see our videos and my videos about these types of things that have happened to me. And also, if you would like to have your story featured on 85 Studios YouTube, be sure to go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/85studios1, or hit us up on Twitter at 85 Studios YouTube, and send us a direct message on Twitter or a message on Facebook, on our Facebook page, and give us a summary of your story. And if we like your story, we will go ahead and give you a number to call, or we will call you on a number when you're ready and interview you over the phone. So other than that, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment below. Tell us what you think of the video, and if you like this format, the interview style. And from here, we'll just go straight to Kansas. Linn in Kansas, who is on the line with us. Linn, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm alright. I'm doing great. I've got my coffee. I'm wired and jittery and shaky and a little bit scared, to tell you the truth. We've been continuing this series for a few hours now, so I'm going to let you go ahead and pick up where you left off.
Okay, well, as I was saying in the last series, I was talking about this dog that I had adopted, and there were several things that were happening to it that you know, for one thing, it wouldn't go into the kitchen. There was one point in time that it had it just like froze and was staring into the kitchen. When I looked in the kitchen, my chandelier that I had, it was just literally shaking back and forth, just moving back and forth, and it had never done that. It had never done that. I had never seen it do that. And it was unfortunately hooked like a light fixture, like an actual light fixture, into the ceiling, so there was nothing I could do to remove it, like I had some of the other things that had been hanging from the ceiling, my plant and the other lamp. I did go ahead and move. It had these crystal, little round crystal things over the light that kind of went around the light. I did go ahead and remove those because I was afraid that if it was going to start doing that those were going to break. Those were going to dislodge and possibly break. And I think, you know, as I recall back, I also removed them because whenever that thing that day when it shook, that was the first time that I seen it, but eventually it got to the point to where it seemed to just love doing that. It would move that thing back and forth, and, or something was. And I would hear those little glass things rattling. So, again, you know, when there's something disturbing you like that,
Yep.
remove it. So I did. I removed all of the little brown deals, and so then it looked like those little candlestick kind of chandelier looking things, and I stuck those little bulbs that kind of look like flames up there on it. So it still looked nice. It didn't have the fancy little coverings that went around it. anymore. And I think the final thing that happened with the dog was I'd said that it would stop at those glass sliding doors and it would growl. Well, one day it did more than that. It just went off. I mean, it was a full alarm, barking, growling, carrying on, basically, almost slamming itself into the patio door.
And those dogs, if I remember right, those dogs have the kind of bark that will immediately stop you in your tracks and make your blood run ice cold.
Oh, yeah. When she did that, I mean, I'd never heard her act like that. Never. And by that time, I'd had her about a year. And, I mean, I was immediately on my feet and looking out that patio door going, what is out there? I thought maybe there was an actual prowler outside.
Was this at night?
Yeah, this was at night. This was about 11 o'clock at night. Everybody was asleep. I was still awake because, again, by that time, I was having a lot of trouble sleeping in the house. I had even gotten to the point where I was no longer sleeping in my bedroom. I had things touching me through the night.
The blanket thing.
I just had literally had enough. I was creeped out in that bedroom. I couldn't sleep in it. I had started sleeping on the couch in the living room. I started turning on the TV, not to actually watch the TV, but to try to drown out the sounds of things walking on the ceiling or on the roof. I couldn't actually drown out the loud booming, banging sounds when they would happen, but, the white noise, I started...
That's something that is commonly reported also, and did it sound like footsteps, like human footsteps, like walking in like two at a time?
Yeah, there were times when I really thought somebody had crawled up in my attic. And I would go out there and look and no, the patio, the padlock was still on that.
That's actually a common report when somebody has one, a poltergeist, or two, a demonic type. I'm not going to use the word haunting, but a demonic entity, infestation type thing. Because a lot of times what happens is it is literally doing everything it can to get your attention for some reason. And this is usually one of the first things that people first hear when they move into a new house that's haunted, or, for lack of a better word, haunted. The reason why I don't want to say haunted is because when you say haunted, it basically implies that there is residual energy in the house. Now, so far, the one haunting, the one paranormal event that you spoke of earlier, where this entity, it took specifically the dishes that you were using, that you were going to use to bake with, out of the cupboards and smashed them. That could be considered an intelligent haunting. As far as this one goes, a lot of what you've said up to this point about this particular haunting could possibly be residual, but some of the things I may have forgotten so far. There's been a few episodes and it's kind of late. They maybe could have been depiction of intelligent haunting, but I'm also seeing poltergeist type activity where things are being thrown, things are being moved, electronics and stuff like that are shorting out and for no apparent reason, appliances, things like that. So I'm kind of in between on the what my thoughts are on it so far.
Well, like I said, back then I didn't know. I used the word ghost randomly, as far as
just as a generalization.
By that time, the kids, I couldn't hide things from the kids, especially the older ones anymore.
Yeah.
They had seen too much. They had heard too much. They had been at other people's houses. They were old enough to go see their friends. Their friends didn't have that kind of stuff happening at their house.
Yeah.
And they started questioning me and asking me stuff and talking to me, and yeah, I couldn't hide it from them anymore. I couldn't protect them by hiding what I thought was protecting them. And I did tell them, I said, okay, guys, I said,
I'll level with you. This is,
I'm gonna level with you. I think, that we have a ghost in our house. But I said, you can't go to school and tell your friends. You can't go to school and tell your teacher. I said, because they're going to think we're crazy, okay? So this is, if you want to talk about it, you can talk to me. You can talk to each other about it, but don't talk to anyone else about it. Because, we're in a small town. Word gets around really fast.
Yeah.
And with, honestly, I didn't need that kind of issue. I didn't need the school calling me going, okay, you probably send your kids to a counselor or psychologist or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't need that kind of stuff. There was nothing wrong with my kids, and there was nothing wrong with me. But when the dog totally flipped out like she did that night, the door that I had that hook lock on was completely open, and I never heard it. I never heard the door break. I never heard the lock break. And this happened while I was home. I mean, I was right there. I was probably 15 feet from that door, and yes, there was a sliding glass door there and everything, but I would have heard that.
Yeah.
That would have been loud enough for me to hear.
How was it broken? And was it broken where it screws into the actual door, or just, I mean...
Well, I waited till daylight. I didn't open those glass doors.
I don't blame you. I really don't.
I calmed Rowdy down, and I mean, it was a horrible feeling because I was terrified of my own home.
Yeah.
It was a horrible feeling to be terrified in your own home. Your home is supposed to be your sanctuary, your place where you can find peace from everything else. And I was definitely not finding any peace. And I was, I was really starting to get very upset with the way things are going with the house. And anyway, so I calmed Rowdy down, and she did quiet down, but I would still hear her quietly growling. And she never left that patio door. She never, not all night. Not till the next morning when I got up. I finally did get some sleep. I was getting just a couple hours of sleep at night, just enough to get me through the day kind of thing. Going to work or getting my kids off to school or whatever I needed to do. And I was actually starting to get sick. I'd been doing this for a long time, this up pretty much 24-hour-a-day thing, trying to work and support my kids, and it was taking a real toll on me. And anyway, next morning I got up. I didn't have to go to work that day. Got the kids off to school. Little one was with me. Went out there, looked at that lock, and the way that lock was the way you put it, hooked it into the wall and stuff as you screwed it in.
Yeah.
Okay, it had a really long screw end on it, and you just screwed those pieces in, and then you latched them together. that the part where the eye part was in the actual wall of the door. And literally it had been completely unscrewed.
Unscrewed?
Yeah, in other words, it was like somebody came along and unscrewed that part of the lock, and it was still connected to the hook part. The eye was still connected to the hook part. And that part, the hook part was connected to the door.
Huh.
So, and that's why I did not hear it break open. It didn't break open. Something had unscrewed the hook.
The dog had sensitive enough hearing that it knew what was going on, and it was trying to alert you. Dogs can see in the dark. They have a layer over their eye, over their retina, actually their lens of their eye, called a tapium, I may be butchering the hell out of this word, tapium lucidium, which actually reflects the light back from their retina through their lens twice, which basically amplifies the light that they see, which may also be another reason why they can see some of the stuff that we can't. So, that dog could see in the dark. It most likely could see exactly what was going on.
Well, the way that this indoor patio was hooked up as far as the lighting system, you had to open up the patio door, and that's where the light switch was. I mean, if I'd have had a light switch actually in the living room,
yeah,
I would have kicked it on that night and checked it out. But I wasn't even going to open those doors. I had a unguard. I mean, again, I was terrified. I didn't know if it was whatever this thing was in my house, or if it was an actual prowler, or if somebody had managed to open the doors, the garage, and was actually trying to come in, and it was pitch black in there. Yeah. Even with the living room lights on, it was still pretty dark. You just couldn't really see on
Generally,
the other side of the wall.
When you have the living room lights on and you're trying to look into a room that's dark through a glass, it's going to be
a reflection.
Yeah, so you won't be really able to see
that was the other reason I mean, even if you were, you know, when I was looking in, you're right, I had that reflection thing going on, but as you got further down to the floor, there wasn't as much of a reflection, so you could kind of see it with the light down onto the floor. I couldn't see anything. I wasn't about to shut the lights off. I had learned a long time ago, don't shut the lights off, because whenever you shut the lights off, things got worse. The things that would get worse were people being, it felt like people touching me, or I'd be sitting on the couch and it felt like I feel pressure, like when somebody else sits next to you. I would feel like somebody was sitting next to me, somebody had just sat next to me. I have very, 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 very long hair at that time, and it would feel like somebody was kind of gently tugging on my hair or touching my hair. I mean, again, I mean, I wasn't like physically being harmed, but at the same time, you know, mentally, emotionally, it was really nothing with me to have this going on.
Kind of a psychological torture. I'm familiar.
And then there were other times when I'd be asleep or just kind of sitting there trying to relax, and it felt like somebody or something was pinching me, pinching my arms or pinching my legs, or you know, just little teeny tiny pinches. And, you know, of course, you know, I'd pull the covers off and I'd look, and this was even with the covers on. And I'd look, you know, I'm thinking, okay, did an ant or something come into the house, you know, or, you know, is there a bug in the house that what's biting me in the couch, you know. I hadn't seen anything, you know, any kind of insects or anything in the house. That doesn't mean that there wasn't something. Nope, never found a thing. Not one thing. I'd cover up, go back to sleep, or try to go back to sleep, and it would start all over again within, 10, 15 minutes. Just about the time when you're getting ready to go to sleep. And, again, and it didn't happen every night, but it would happen often.
Just random,
and it would always happen. Yeah.
Enough that you expected it to happen or knew that it was going to happen.
It would happen. It would be one of those things where I would stay up night after night after night and work day after day, and eventually I would get so darn tired I would just lay down and go to sleep. And it would be like the first time I'd slept in 2 or 3 days. And, you know, I always wondered if there was some kind of effect on my body from the lack of sleep, that maybe that was causing it. But, you know, I've had a lot of sleepless nights. Since, and I've never had that feeling ever.
As a fellow insomniac, I can totally relate.
And it just seemed like there was just always something going on with the house. There was either the water pipes were having issues, water pipes breaking, just it was getting really. I was getting fed up with it. And I was thinking, you know what, I'm going to fix these water pipes. The last time that the water pipes broke, I was like, you know, I'm going to fix this water pipes, and I'm just going to sell this house. And I don't care how much it costs me. Because I was just to that point. And I was getting ready to do that, I started fixing kind of fixing a few things here and there on the house, just minor stuff, and getting it ready to be shown. I getting ready, looking up realtors to see one that would the one that sold us the house in the first place. I was looking to see if she'd be willing to sell the house for us. And it was getting around 4th of July, and so I put everything off till after the holidays, and day after 4th of July, I let the dog out in the fenced yard, and I was a little slow about getting out there. Hadn't really slept very good, and I wasn't really actually feeling very well. And one of the neighbor kids had opened up the gate, and she, by the time I got out there, she had taken off, and I couldn't find her. She had just literally taken off. I couldn't find her anywhere. Turns out she was hit by a truck. She ran out in front of a truck, and she died.
Poor baby.
And it just really, really pissed me off because I always kept those doors and those gates locked so that she wouldn't get out. But all it took, neighbor kids had been shooting off these fireworks with these little parachute things.
Oh, yeah.
And they had opened up my gate and went in my backyard to get those parachutes, collect those parachutes, which ticked me off because they were actually firing them over my roof of my house.
Yeah.
And, fire, that kind of stuff. Worried about that kind of stuff. But anyway, and when they did that, they didn't shut the gate. And it was the gate that was in the side yard. I had 2 gates, one on each side. One was right next to the garage and kind of hidden by the garage, so I couldn't really tell that, unless I was out in the yard, that gate was open. The other side yard gate was closed. Anyway, she saw that as soon as she was out in the yard, and she did. For whatever reason, she took off. And she was hit by a car and died.
Sad.
Yep. So I didn't get another dog. I didn't get another animal for years. I was having a lot. Like I said, we've been having accidents with this dog as far as in the house, and and then the growling and the barking and her personality kind of flipped. She went from being real happy-go-lucky to more aggressive.
Yeah.
And protective of the family. And, I don't know a whole lot about Rottweilers, but her behavior was just real different. From this happy-go-lucky dog to this dog that as soon as you came home, she was sitting right next to you, almost in your lap, and
big lap
other
dog.
than, and kind of whiny and wimpy, kind of like, like almost crying kind of deal. And then the not eating, or not gaining weight, losing weight like she did, and then something was wrong. And I always, like I said, I always wondered whether it was something that, whether it was the vet, whether it was the house, whether it was the dog had issues that they didn't check. I never really knew, but I knew that I'd been through enough with her that I didn't want another dog. I suspected that it was the house. And I wasn't going to put another animal through that.
Yeah.
So as time went on, we started having more sightings and hearing sounds. There were periods of time when it would sound like there was someone in the house, a man and a woman arguing. And there was, a full-grown man and woman arguing. Now, I could attribute to that to maybe somebody being outside arguing, but the problem is that there was nobody outside. And being on a lot and a half house, our nearest neighbor was half a lot away and across the street.
Yeah. Did you ever hear what they were saying or anything like that?
I couldn't really tell. I really, really couldn't. I heard it, Lord, I heard it many, many, many times, but it sounded like the male was yelling at the female, and the female was somewhat crying. And I would only hear it for just a few minutes, and then it would be gone. I didn't hear it. The other thing that we had going on was we would hear classical piano music.
Interesting.
And I would go outside listening to see if I could hear it from outside, thinking maybe it's somebody that's playing classical music or playing classical piano. No noise. Dead silence. Come back in the house. I wouldn't hear it at first, but then eventually it would start back up. I played this go outside again thing, nothing, go back in, it's still playing, or it wasn't playing, but then it would start back up. And that would happen off and on throughout, and it was another one of those things that it would start, again, I'm starting to really, really stress, going, what is this? What is going on with my house? And my children were starting to show symptoms of anxiety. There was things starting to happen with them mentally and emotionally where I finally took all of them in to see a counselor. And she diagnosed him with extreme stress and anxiety. And I was like, how can they have, she was asking me what's going on in the personal life. Well, the only thing that was going on was, we'd been through a divorce. And other than that, there was nothing else that was abnormal. And even then, by that time, the divorce had been over for like a year and a half, 2 years. And, I couldn't be honest with this woman and say, look, my kids are seeing ghosts, okay? I've got stuff opening and shutting doors in my house. I've got, by that time, my kids had especially my older ones, and again, my younger one, was getting weird feelings around the house. They were getting those same scary feelings. It would get to the point to where they wouldn't go in the hallway unless the hall light was on. They
afraid of the dark, but at an older age.
Yeah. I mean, it reminded me of, like, literally, you know, when you got the 2, 3, 4-year-olds, you know, they're scared of the dark and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Except that by that time they were 14 and 15 and 16.
It's not the dark, it's what's in the dark.
And they were starting to have issues with their grades. All of my kids had really good grades, and they had started having issues with their grades. And, you know, of course, I'm doing the normal stuff that parents do, you know, making sure there's no drugs or alcohol going on because of their age group, you know, and double checking all of their friends, to make sure there's nothing going on that direction, and, you know, keeping in constant contact with the school to make sure there's no bullying going on or anything like that that might be causing them issues. There was bullying going on, but we got that under control, and that it didn't stop completely, but it stopped a lot of it. I was really, really thankful for the anti-bullying law because I was able to, you know, basically call the school and look and you know, just tell them straight up, hey, my son says he's being bullied. These are the kids. It's your job to ensure that it stops. The anti-bullying law gives you that ability to do that. I want it stopped. I want it stopped now.
Yeah. Sorry, these headphones are crushing my ears. I feel like my head is in a vice. Keep adjusting them, and these people that are watching, my audience, probably wondering why I've got them down, upside down on my head. They're just crashing down. They're newer headphones, but they're plastic and they're not broke in yet, and so I've been sitting here wearing them, and they're crushing. Anybody who's like a gamer or what have you probably understands exactly how that feels.
Well, you know,
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that, you know, overall, for the first 5 or 6 years, we had some pretty creepy things happening, like, you know, seeing people walking in the hallways and hearing people arguing, and the music and the doors and stuff like that. But we hadn't really had any real physical, you know, like they hadn't actually hurt us. Yeah, they were messing with us psychologically. When I took them in to see the counselor and she had diagnosed them with this stuff, I was literally ticked. I went to the library, and I walked up to the library, and I didn't care. And I said, do you have any books on ghosts? And she didn't really react any different, you know, like she wasn't like shocked or surprised. I was like, oh God, she's gonna think I'm nuts. But at that point, I just really didn't care. And she said, well, we actually have quite a bit. And she took me to this section, and I mean, there's like tons of books. All kinds of books. And I checked out like 4 or 5 of them and took them home and started reading. And that was the first time that I actually heard the word or read the word, paranormal. I started reading about what people thought they were, and I started reading about, at that time, there wasn't like any places that it listed that were local, but there were places in other states where people actually had, paranormal investigations and, driving away the ghost and different things like that, different things that they were doing. And, it was great to hear that there was people that could do that, but there was nothing in my state. I couldn't find anything at that point in time in my state. And, so I started looking into other ways that I might be able to get rid of them. And I read up on some books. I can't remember the name of the book. It's been quite a while back, but it started talking about smudging the house.
Yeah,
and
like
saying
sage
prayers
prayers and sage
and prayer to God, and prayers to God while you were smudging your house, and opening up all the windows and doors so that the spirit could be released. And I had already been doing a lot of praying, and like I said before, I think if it had not been for my faith in God, that I probably would have lost my mind. I really would, because it was getting to the point to where I was really, really struggling with being able to sleep in this house. I hated going home. The only reason why I went home at all was because my children were there. When the dog was killed, I thought that I would just, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to sell this house.
Yeah.
Well, I called a realtor and was setting up an appointment to see the house, and in the meantime, I was checking out places to move. And by that time, the price of rent had gone even higher than it was. And there was just no way that I could do that. I mean, with that town being a smaller town, houses are really high in demand, rentals, and the people that own the homes, they were continually just raising the prices up, and people were somehow affording them. But I wasn't one of those people. I still had a very strict budget I had to follow through, and I still didn't have any guarantee until the house was sold that the house would be sold, or how long it would take to sell the house. So once again, I backed out. I was like, Holy Lord, and the house payment was only like about $375 to $400 a month, and I was going to be paying almost triple that amount for rental.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that. So I went ahead and I grabbed some sage incense is where I grabbed. And I grabbed my Bible and I went through the house. I opened up all the windows. I didn't even explain to my kids what I was doing. I didn't even know about, a lot of times they say remove your kids when you're doing this. Well, I didn't know about that part. There was nothing in the book about that. So I went ahead and I started smudging my house and praying to God. I was saying the Lord's Prayer. And when I was done, the house seemed like it had worked. I wasn't having.
That's good.
There was like this light. I mean, you could actually see there was like this. The house inside just was brighter. It felt good.
That's good.
And I thought, this is really cool. And I could actually kind of feel like there was some peace in the house. It was like a peacefulness in the house. And, but it didn't last.
Came back?
Yeah, that dark, dreary, fearful feeling that I had been living with constantly. I mean, it was like, the difference between night and day. When it started coming back, it came back very quickly. And, I mean, when it did, that's when things started getting really, really bad. One of my sons woke up screaming. Something had pulled the covers over his face and was pushing on his face, trying to suffocate him, is what he said. It felt like somebody was pushing on his face, trying to suffocate him.
Wow.
My daughter had woke up running out of her bedroom, said, there's something in my bed with me. There's something in my bed with me. My littlest one, he was about 5 or 6 years old. He started not sleeping at night and being woke up and crying and saying that something was hurting him.
Wow.
And it got so bad that I squeezed him on the couch and I started sleeping so that, I was on the edge and he was on the inside of the couch so he wouldn't fall off, sleeping with me. So yeah, there was things physically attacking us at that point, and it would randomly happen. And then it would stop, and then it would happen again, and then it would stop for a while, and then it would happen again.
Just long enough to where you kind of felt like, maybe it was like a fluke thing, and then right back all of a sudden when you least expect it to happen, it suddenly happens again?
Yeah. Yeah. It would happen for maybe a day or two, and then it would stop, and we wouldn't have it happen for maybe weeks or a month, and then it would come back, and it would happen again.
It's very interesting, but I can relate to that, actually. I can relate to that.
And again, it was almost always like some kind of physical
Like an attack.
thing. Yeah. And grabbing them or touching them or grabbing me or touching me. I mean, by that time, I was like, I've got to sell this house. I've got to. But my job that I had was not giving me decent wages, and was not giving me decent raises either. And being in a small town, there really wasn't a whole lot of jobs to turn to that would allow me to work days only. Most of it was swing shift type jobs, and there was no way I was going to leave my kids all night in the house without me, or even the 4 to midnight shifts. There was just no way I was going to do that. Number one, I didn't feel that it was safe. They were all fairly young. Number two, I figured even if I could afford a babysitter, I probably would take a huge chunk out of my check because, we're talking 4 kids. And as far as my ex was going, he had been ordered to pay child support, but he wasn't. He would not pay it. He pretty much, other than coming around on occasion to harass, he pretty much abandoned us. He just pretty much left us.
Nice guy.
And so yeah, that left me with my low-paying job to support all these kids and put food on the table. And unfortunately, I tried to get some help through the government, and I really made me sick to even try that because I'd never been on government assistance. But at that time, because I had a house that was worth a certain amount of money, they denied me. They did eventually help me with some child care cost, about $100 of my child care cost. And then 3 months later, they lowered it down to where it was even less. It wasn't because I had made any more. It's just for some reason they kept lowering it down and down. And eventually, I just was like, you know what? You guys aren't even paying $10. I don't need you anymore. So I went out and I found a second job, and the second job I could work independently on my own. I started cleaning people's houses. And I would clean people's houses instead of having the weekend off or on my day off. I would go to work, and I would make sure that I was home during the day, or by the time my kids were home. But on Saturdays and Sundays, they would be by themselves. And I would try not to work more than 4 to 6 hours. And that helped. That helped a lot. That helped put a little bit more food on the table, and it kept us going. Now, I know that a lot of people might be thinking that maybe it was because of all the stress from the kids, the stress from, the low-paying job and trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And I for the longest time, I kind of thought that way myself. I really did. I thought, well, maybe I'm just overstressed. And maybe my stress is just kind of rubbing off on my kids, too. But the problem is that there were just too many things that had happened in the house that either we all saw or that one or two of us saw at the same time that were going on in that house. I mean, how does stress make a chandelier scurry like that? How does stress make a door hook unscrew, the eye part unscrew completely out of the door? It's a 3-inch. I mean, it wasn't one of those short little hook screws. I got one of the big long ones that you could just literally screw in there. It was like 3 inches long. How does stress do that? How does, if you're talking physical stuff, maybe stress could cause you to have tingly feelings that feel like something's biting you all over your body, or maybe some of that is, some sort of psychological. But I've never known stress to open and shut doors by themselves. I've never known stress to cause you to, when you don't normally hear things that aren't there, to hear stuff.
I mean, if it was just one of you, then, maybe something like a mental problem, especially maybe anxiety or something like that, could have caused something like that. But collectively, or all of you at once, or one at a time, hearing things or seeing things move like that, there's really no mental or psychological explanation for something like that. And as far as a lot of people might have heard of psychokinetic energy or something like that, which could manifest itself possibly as a poltergeist, it is very unlikely. It's very rare, especially when multiple people have things happen to them where they're seeing things move and things like that. Not often that when one family member sees something and they're home alone or what have you move, that they leave the room or they leave the house and the next family member sees something like that move. So that...
Well, and that's the other thing I want to stress, is that when I would see stuff like that going on, I didn't go running to my kids and talk to my kids about it. I kept it to myself. I figured that just what they were seeing and the things that were happening with them, they didn't need to hear my sightings and the things that were going on with me. I didn't, I wanted to be the sounding board for my kids to be able to come and talk to me about this kind of stuff. And I figured that eventually I would, when they got older, I might talk to them about the things that had happened to me. But at that point in time, whatever was happening to me and whatever I was seeing or saw, if they weren't there in the room, they didn't know about it. I didn't tell them. So, and I think it was just my way of not adding any extra stress onto my kids. Than they already had. And I honestly did. I eventually, like I said, I eventually just started feeling really, really trapped in this house. And I mean, I would just be up for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and days, and then I might, on my days off when I didn't have to work or after I got off of my part-time job that I had, I would maybe crash out for a couple of hours and then I would wake up.
I have a theory, may or may not be, I mean, it's just a theory. I'm kind of, okay, I'm looking at this as you did a cleansing, like a smudging on the house, right? And
yes.
Then it seemed like it was peaceful, and then it was peaceful for a long time, and then it whatever it was came back, and it was more evil than it was previously. It was more physical.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you suppose that maybe, because you did say that there was multiple spirits in the house that your kids were seeing and interacting with, do you suppose that it may be possible that there may have been a protective or a taming kind of guardian spirit there, more or less, and you may have crossed that good protective spirit over to the light by doing that cleansing, and then the other one that was more evil or more malevolent may have either stayed or decided to come back, or just maybe left for a little while and then decided to come back. I've heard in the past of cases where people have done cleansings and they were expecting everything to get better, and then because there was a spirit there and there was also a demonic entity there which was holding that spirit there, the human spirit was actually allowed to leave, and then the demonic entity actually laid low for a while and then came back full force on the person that I'm going to say tenant, the person that property owner, and then they were the only ones. The demonic things were the only ones there, and there was no basically mediator of good and evil between the two at that point. So the demonic is there to wreak havoc on those people, and that's the only thing that's left.
That is possible. I've actually since then read about that and have heard that can happen. But it's the spirit world, and I have no idea. I just know, like I said, what was happening and how much worse it got.
A theory. I mean, it's just a theory. There's no real 100%. There's no professionals in this by any means.
Well, I've like I said, I started watching stories on YouTube and stuff like that about what they said were real hauntings. You have to be careful as usual on what's real and what's not. But some of the things that people that had gone into houses and cleansed houses and things like that, some of them had said that that had happened to them, that it seemed really, really peaceful, and then it just got really, really bad.
I have another question for you regarding that. Had any of you, you or your kids, ever attempted to communicate with any of these spirits using anything like a witch board, a Ouija board, ITC devices, EMF, anything, EVP, anything like that prior to this?
No. No, I didn't know anything about that. Now, the kid's dad had told me years ago when he was having those experiences at his own house, he had had some things happen that one of his friends had brought over a Ouija board, and they had played with the Ouija board, and they had, things got really worse at their house for a while there. So he told his friend to get rid of the Ouija board, to take it, and throw it away, because, something was, he thought that the Ouija board was making things worse. And they threw it away, and my husband said that the Ouija board was like it came back. He found it back on his front porch.
Interesting.
And, at that time when he was talking to me about that kind of stuff, I hadn't lived in that other house. I hadn't ever experienced really anything, and I kind of blew him off.
Okay.
I mean, I had stayed at that house, at his mother's house, never had anything happen. They had told me that they had, on occasion, it wasn't like my place, but it was on occasions they would have things happen, and I had been there many, many times, and I've never seen anything. Never, nothing. Never felt anything, never felt that fear, never felt,
It was at his mom's house?
Yeah, I never had anything.
Okay.
I mean, so it was just a normal house. So, but they had told me stories about different things that had happened in the house, and I mean, I wasn't like I was calling them a liar. I just listened to the stories and was like, yeah, okay. I didn't really not believe it, but I didn't really believe it either. I just kind of was like,
that's
kind of weirded
interesting.
out by it.
Yeah.
Kind of weirded out by it.
Yeah.
But back to this house, I went ahead and did another cleansing. And I spent the next several years continuing to do cleansing and prayers. I did that to try to keep things at bay, because that was the only way I could feel like things did calm down, even for just a little while, and to keep the peace in the house. We were still having appliances that were breaking down for no reason. I kept thinking, well, I can't afford a whole lot, so maybe it's just, I'm buying these secondhand things, and maybe the maintenance guy, or the guy that sells the stuff, maybe he's halfway fixing them up. They work for a while and then break down. But when you go through, you even go and buy from different places, and you still have that issue going on. Either I'm really, really bad luck with appliances, or there's something weird going on with the house.
Yeah.
The pipes, every year I would have issues with the pipes. Whether it be from draining or sometimes they just wouldn't turn on.
The water?
The water. It wouldn't turn on. It's like there was no water. No water pressure. the doors and stuff, they didn't open as often. They still opened here and there. The cabinet doors, that one in above the stove, it would still open, but not as often. So I just kept up with the cleansing, and I kept up with the prayers. And I mean, I prayed like religiously every night and every morning for God's protection.
Were your children also spiritual? I mean, you say you were, but were your children also Christian or spiritual?
I had started teaching them to pray back when they were really, really, really little. And whenever something would happen and they would come to me, I would say, pray about it. Pray about it, and God will make it go away. God will make it stop. And I taught them the Lord's Prayer. And I taught him about Michael, the Archangel Michael.
Saint Michael the Archangel?
Yes. I had started praying, that God would send the Archangel Michael down to do battle with whatever was in my home. And I mean, that seemed like the only time that I was still at peace, even though there were still things that were going on, it wasn't as often. But then we started having things move on the table. Things move on the cabinet, on the kitchen table. They would just be moved. They would move by themselves. You could physically see them moving. I had knickknacks and things like that I had put in place, and they would be moved. And sometimes I would even actually see them being moved by nothing. It's like something's moving them, but there's nothing there.
Did you guys ever experience, like, I know some of the common reports are like cold spots and sometimes even hot spots, like temperature fluctuations in places where there's not like a draft or, not normally cold or hot for no apparent reason or anything like that?
Yeah, yes, we did. And I always blamed it on a draft. I mean, I always did. I mean, I didn't know anything about hot and cold spots. I didn't know anything about that. So when I would suddenly just start getting just super, super hot, just a super hot feeling, I mean, almost to the point like you're sweating.
So you experienced areas that were just super hot.
Yeah, and then other times it would be super, super cold. And I don't, and it'd be like, well, why is it cold out there? I mean, why is it cold in my house? I've got the heat on. I've got, all the windows are shut. I thought, well, okay, well, the house is a little older now, so I went and I bought that stuff that you put on to seal the windows and started putting that in place. And bought dark shades, curtains and different things like that, and started putting those in place, to keep the sunlight out so it wouldn't be so hot. And nothing helped. Nothing helped. And what really would get me was, I'd walk in the hallway and it'd be like freezing cold in that hallway. And the thermostat was right there in the hallway. And the thermostat would be like, it'd be like 68 degrees in that hallway. It would register 68, 62 degrees in that hallway. And yet I had set it so that if it got below 75, that the heat would come on. And it wasn't coming on. And so then I thought, well, okay, it's either the thermostat or it's my heater. So I had both of those checked. Had them change out the thermostat even. Put a brand new thermostat in. Because, it's cold.
Yeah.
And the heat should have turned on. And especially in the hallway. I mean, it might be cold or somewhat cold in the living room or somewhat cold in the kitchen, but man, you walk into the hallway and it'd just be freezing. And you'd walk into the master bedroom and it was like walking into a refrigerator. Cold.
No old leaky windows or... Well, you said you sealed them up, so I assume not. Yeah.
Well, and I even had the windows on the... See, there was only an east window and a south window. And the south windows were double windows.
Okay.
So I had those replaced. I had new windows put in there. And it didn't make a difference.
So a lot of people, when it comes to hot and cold spots, it's a theory that a lot of people, paranormal researchers, have that the spirits are attempting to use the energy from the temperature in the room, whether that be hot or cold, to manifest and be able to gain energy to either move things or manifest in some way to make themselves known. That's why I ask.
And yeah, I had read about that. Like I said, once I got my internet, I started reading up. I started doing a lot more reading, especially as toward the end of those years that we were living in that house. In 2003, or actually 2001, I met a man and I remarried.
Yeah.
And he moved in to my home. My two oldest children, well, my oldest one was getting ready to move out, and my other two were getting on the verge of moving and going out on their own. And so that pretty much just left me and my youngest one, and the other two, they had jobs. They were out working. They were home off and on, but they were still going to school, but they weren't home a lot. They weren't home. So it's kind of just the three of us. And I'll never forget, one day he was sitting there at the house. I had come home from work, and he looks at me and he says, "Your house is haunted."
Oh.
I was like, "Yeah." And I said, "What happened?" And he said, I was sitting here watching TV, and I looked over, and I had this American Indian statue on the coffee table, and it was heavy. It was a stone statue.
Yeah.
And he said, "I watched that thing move all the way across the coffee table by itself."
Yeah. Surprise.
Surprise. and he said that, he had a couple of other incidents that happened to where he had gone into the master bedroom. The master bedroom had a half bath in it. It was basically a shower, sink, and the toilet.
Yeah.
So, you know, the hall bathroom had a bathtub and the sink and the toilet. And he said that he went to take a shower and the bathroom door opened and then slammed shut. And yeah, the stuff that happened to him was stuff that we, and you know, my kids and I, we've been dealing with for years. So I was like, yeah. Matter of factly,
yeah.
not surprised.
Like, so sorry you had to find out this way.
And he said, so how long has this place been haunted? How long? And I said, well, since we moved here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he knew a lot more about normal stuff. But he actually hadn't ever experienced it. He had read more about it, and he was Native American and had been partially raised up on reservation, and he had some very strong beliefs about the spirit world. And he said, you know, when we have things like this happen on the reservation, we tie a white cloth on the south side.
I'm familiar with this. I have Native American in my blood as well, and a lot of my family is Native American, and we have a lot of those same spiritual beliefs, and actually I'm very familiar with this.
Well, I told him, I said, well, you know, I do a cleansing around the house, and by that time I had read some books on, you know, what they call what was it called? It was shoot. It's kind of like white magic, white, like being white Wiccan. That's what it's called, Wiccan.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they talked about when they're spirits, you know, with sprinkling salt around and getting rid of evil spirits, that kind of stuff. So I was
cayenne pepper to break a curse, and salt, sea salt, and certain crystals and things like that.
Yeah, and I started reading more about crystals and positive energy and grounding, and part of that was to get rid of that kind of stuff, but part of it was also trying to find something more than God, because, you know, I spent a good majority of this time in the house praying to God to get rid of this stuff, and it would go away temporarily, but it wasn't gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was starting to go, okay, well, you know, I don't understand why God isn't answering my prayer. He knows this is the only place that I have. He knows what it's doing to me. He knows what it's doing to my kids. This makes no sense that I would pray, like I said, religiously, day and night, and still have this going on, and do these cleansings and still have stuff going on. You know, in my book, or at least in my eyes, that stuff should have been gone, because you know, the Bible does talk about, you know, having faith, you know, even the size of a mustard seed, you know, and how he can move mountains with this. And I thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe I just don't have the faith. Maybe I just don't have enough faith. Maybe, you know, I've waited a lot of years now.
Oh, okay, we lost the call. Hey, Lynn.
Hello.
We're still live here, but we're going to go ahead and end this episode here, and we're going to start a new one. I'm going to go ahead and talk to my audience here right quick. Guys, if you're liking these long kind of trilogies here that we're doing of people's hauntings and their stories about their haunting experiences, then please feel free to hit subscribe and hit like on the videos, and leave us a comment down below and let us know if there's anything that you think that we should improve, or what your thoughts are on these. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more videos that we do and that we've done. Troy Boy is officially a manager of the channel as well, and he is able to upload as well on his own. If you would like to have your story featured on 85 Studios YouTube, be sure to hit us up on Facebook at facebook.com/85studios1, or on Twitter and send us a direct message at 85 Studios YouTube and send us a direct message. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.